Hello, the internet, and welcome to Open Source Directions, hosted by Quansight, the webinar that brings you all of the news about the future of your favorite open source projects. My name is Anthony Skopatz, your host for Open Source Directions. Co-hosting with me today is Carol.
Hi, folks. I'm Carol Willing. I'm an active member of the Jupyter and Python communities, and I'm happy to have an opportunity today to talk about Panel with Julia and Philip from Anaconda. Julia, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, I'm Julia. I work at Anaconda on the HoloViz tools, which is a whole umbrella of different visualization tools.
All right.
And
Hi,
Philip?
I'm Philip. I also work for Anaconda. I work on the consulting team, but yeah, most of my work is also on developing HoloViz tools. So I'm author of Panel, work a lot on HoloViews and various other tools that we develop.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much to both of you for joining today. And as usual, before we dive into all the fun technical bits, we have our famous Tweet of the Week section, where each of our panelists presents a tweet that we've been enjoying recently. So Philip, you're first up, I think.
Okay, my tweet is this tweet by Matt Rocklin. He basically frequently records these little screencasts of him demonstrating all the different tools that he develops, including Numba, Dask, and QPy, which more recently like GPU-based stuff. And it's really neat to see where this ecosystem has gone in the last couple of years. You can really see he starts with very basic Python usage and basically scales up performance by like 3-4 orders of magnitude by going through all these different tools.
Yeah, it's really impressive. Cool. Julia?
Mine is by Chris Holgraf, and it's about F-strings and just an appreciation of them. I am also a fan of F-strings and very excited to be done with Python 2.
Yeah.
Yes, yay. And there's some cool stuff for F-strings coming out in 3.8 too. So check it out for debugging.
We just did get rid of Python 3.5 cool. As well somehow.
Yeah. That's easy enough. Just click the button. My tweet today is actually about a project called Manifold, Manifold 4.0. And Manifold is sort of it came out of the library world, and it's an open source project, nonprofit, funded by the Mellon Foundation, and lets you post books, videos, all kinds of stuff. And they just started a new feature called a reading group where you can annotate things as a group, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's really interesting. For my tweet, I have this, the most beautiful tweet in the past week has been by Dave Beasley. So if you're unfamiliar, just for a bit of context here, there's a tweet that is going around that says something to the effect of, when you get a PhD in computer science, they take you into a room and tell you that recursion isn't useful. And everyone in the world feels that it's cute to retweet this with the exact same text, obviously. So Dave Beasley's tweet in response to this is, I wonder how many levels deep that CS PhD recursion tweet has to be quote tweeted to crash all of Twitter with some kind of internal recursion depth limit, which it's just perfect on so many levels.
Absolutely.
With that, we'll go ahead and dive into our discussion on Panel. So Panel, if you're unfamiliar, has about 550 stars on GitHub right now. It's got about 27,000 downloads across PyPI and Conda, about equally split between those, in fact. And so we've just got a few questions for both you, Julia, and Philip, that Carol and I will ask to give us some context on where the project came from and how it started. So.
Yep.
Yeah, well, just like Anthony kind of led in, Philip, why was the project started and what need does it fill in our open source world?
So in the Python world, we have this wide array of different visualization libraries, and visualization is cool. But when you're kind of developing some analysis in a notebook, often, what you often end up wanting to do is sharing this with someone else in the organization or outside of your organization. You can deploy it as an app or dashboard. And so this transition between kind of developing your analysis and then publishing it in some way has historically been pretty hard in the Python ecosystem. And so as part of our consulting projects, we saw this problem pretty often. So over the last year, I decided to finally put some of the ideas that I've been having and that we've encountered into practice. And then so I developed Panel to kind of make that process of taking some analysis, wrapping it in a dashboard and publishing it really easy.
Yeah, and we also
Fantastic.
wanted to make sure that Panel could be used with all these different plotting libraries. So it works really well with Matplotlib and Bokeh, out-of-the-box Bokeh and Plotly, but also it works really well with all the tools that we work on, like HoloViews and HVplot and Datashader.
Very cool. I think we lost Anthony's sound.
Oh, there we are. Yeah, I was just saying, sorry, that yeah, that interop is really important. So are there alternative projects to Panel out there?
So the thing is, when I started Panel, there wasn't really. So the first thing that came out was kind of Plotly Dash, which is a really, really powerful piece of technology. It lets you build really polished dashboards, but at the same time, it also requires you to know a fair bit about kind of understanding about web development. And so Panel is kind of a higher level API. More recently, there's been this really neat project from the Jupyter folks, which is called Voila, which is all lets you take your notebook, wrap it, and just say, voila, serve this dashboard, this notebook, and then you get a dashboard out of it. It's actually pretty similar to Panel, but Panel kind of, the Bokeh server is kind of slightly different from Jupyter, so it's slightly more scalable in some ways. But something that we really want to work on, we want to kind of work well with Voila. So that's something I'll bring up later in some of the sections about the roadmap and so on. And then finally, there's our Shiny, which is kind of the thing that we're replicating that everyone's kind of was jealous of in the Python ecosystem. And that's kind of the motivation behind what we're doing.
Very cool. So Julia, what is some of the technology that this is built upon?
So it's built on Bokeh and Param. So Bokeh, people normally think of it as a plotting library, but it's actually Python. There's a Python side and a JavaScript side, and they communicate to each other. So it can be used to build much more intricate things than just plots. And it has a really good infrastructure for setting up custom extensions. So it's a good basis.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, that's great. And who started the Panel project?
So a lot of what we do at Anaconda is kind of we take consulting projects with various customers and then kind of fulfill their needs, and it's usually been the visualization space. And we've seen this need for Panel for quite a long time. And we had this ongoing project with the US Army Corps of Engineers, who kind of, we told them we could build this Panel thing, and they were like, go for it. And so it was really nice to have like 6 to 8 months to kind of work solidly on this project. And that's basically how it came about. And it's quite nice to see that they're now kind of the need they had was they had this problem where they'd do some analysis and then they'd hand over the analysis to some other team to kind of publish it in some form, make a web app out of it. And so that back and forth was kind of took quite a long time. And the idea now is that they can quickly prototype something. The people that are doing the analysis can build a dashboard and kind of directly publish it. And it's come out pretty well.
I know that was really the tutorial that went on at SciPy this year in Austin. Panel was very well received, and people really enjoyed using it. So that's really cool.
Yeah, really sorry I missed
thank
that.
you for making it. And yeah, Julia, who maintains the project?
So there's this team at Anaconda called the HoloViz team, and we work on consulting, and we do most of the maintenance of Panel. Philip is the author and the main maintainer, and then I write a lot of examples and do small maintenance stuff, and other people on the team also work on it.
Yeah, that's great. So who are the communities of, or what's the community of users, and where do the contributors to Panel come from? Is it mostly internal, or is it you have a lot of downloads, or so are people using it from like all over, and what are some of the domains where these people come from?
So we've had quite a lot of uptake pretty quickly. So even before I publicly announced it, people start using it, playing with it, extending it, which is nice, but also there's also a bit scary. But I mean, it's really comes. I mean, the need for dashboarding comes from like pretty much everyone has a need for that. What a lot of our users have been in kind of the climate geoscience community, particularly people in the Pangeo project, which I think we'll explain a little bit later, have been quite involved. We've had a Google Summer of Code project, kind of building a dashboard for exploring X-ray data using Panel. And then we've had various contributors and users from fields as wide as finance, astronomy, pharmacology, and so on.
Yeah, so I can speak more to Pangeo. So Pangeo is this group of academics and people in like government agencies that are interested in doing climate science and earth sciences in the cloud predominantly. So they use open source technologies like X-ray, Binder, and so the main one, and like they use our viz tools. And so they have this need for creating these interactive dashboards where you can maybe annotate satellite imagery using the drawing tools on Bokeh. That can be done really easily in a Panel dashboard. And they've also been pushing us to work better with the Binder to make it really easy to deploy Panel dashboards.
As a maintainer of Binder, I would totally love to see it easy to deploy on Binder because the Pangeo folks and you folks are doing great work, and making it easier for everyone would be awesome. So this is really for both of you. Is the project participating in any diversity and inclusion efforts?
I should answer. I can start, I guess. So, I mean, in the past year, I've focused on getting the project out, but we've been trying to kind of engage with the developers. I'm very much available on Gitter to help anyone kind of get started on developing. But I think, I mean, community management is something I think I certainly need to get better at. We as a group, I think, need to get better at too.
Yeah, I think we're trying to work on more formal policies a little bit so that we're not so reliant on Philip always being on Gitter.
Bandwidth limit there.
Yeah,
Yes.
but we don't actively really recruit or solicit contributions. So it's kind of people who find Panel and are using it, they tend to find bugs and open PRs.
Yeah, you've also done an outstanding job with the documentation around Panel, especially the example and the gallery of examples are really well done. So thank you for that. I'm sure that helps bring new folks into the fold as well.
Yeah. So with that, we'll go ahead and move on to the project demo, which I think is going to be super exciting for Panel here. So if you both want to, or I guess Julia, you're going to start us off maybe with sharing your screen here.
Yeah.
There are a couple of examples, and then maybe Phil about some in a moment.
There's going to be a moment where it's uncomfortable. Okay, there we go.
You're good.
Okay. So first, I'm going to start off by showing how Panel works. So we're going to talk about the different APIs. So there's 4 different APIs for Panel, but you mostly need to just focus on the first 2, but the other 2 are there if you need them, is kind of how I think of it.
Cool.
So we're going to start off with this, with specifying this plotting function. So it's using hvplot, which is a .plot API that returns hollow views objects. So we set up this little function with a 1-line plot, and it takes in this X, Y, and color as arguments. So we can see that plot right here, and you can see it's well, maybe you can't see, but it's a hollow views object, and it's rendered in Bokeh. So it has this all these Bokeh things that makes it interactive in the kind of typical plot interactivity way. And then we can load in panel. And now we'll be talking about how to make it interactive using panel widgets to get interactivity on the arguments to that function, so the X, Y, and the color. So first we're going to set up a color widget. So that's this thing here. And then we call panel.interact, and we pass in the function, and then we pass in a list of columns and the widget for the color. So there's a couple different ways to use interact, but this example kind of demonstrates several of them at once. So the list of columns is just all the columns on that data frame, and the colors is the widget itself. So you can see you can select and you get changes in the plot, and you can change the Y and change the X and stuff. And then you get this interactivity. And again, it's still a bokeh plot, so you still have that.
So,
stuff
so
as
is
well.
it fair to describe panel then as a set of APIs for describing interactivity? Is that like a good way to think about it?
I think that's fair. I mean, it's also all these widgets.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's kind of both.
Okay.
And ways of laying out everything, right?
And ways of laying out everything. So yeah, so what you actually get if you print this layout object, which is this dashboard up here, you see that it's a column, and then inside it has a column and a row. So, so you can index into that and reorganize it in different ways to make it prettier.
Oh.
So here we're using Markdown,
cool.
and we're taking the first thing here, the column, and then we're taking the plot and putting it. This might be easier to see if I change how it is. Okay, and so it still has that interactivity. Let me change the color because that's more extreme. Okay, and so that's the first
really
API.
cool.
And then this next API is probably where most people can stop. Like this one is probably all where most people need to get. This is for if you want to specifically declare that your function depends on certain parameters. So you specify your widgets, and then you say, my function depends on the values of all these widgets. And this allows you to lay it out. It doesn't have any magic at this point. It's just taking the values of the widgets. That's boring. And and taking the values of the widgets and it's just popping them into this function. So there's no magic widget generation. Everything is pretty explicit. Just the dependencies are declared in the specific API. So this one's pretty powerful. But sometimes you're getting more involved and you want to write a class where you don't care as much about what the thing looks like. You just really want to be really clear about what all your little dependencies are and which function. This is particularly good for really big dashboards we found, where you want to declare that this plot depends on these parameters, and this other plot depends on these other parameters. And right now we do this using the param, the library, one of the libraries that Panel is based on, which is called param, which is a zero dependency Python package. And you can declare, so instead of setting up widgets here, we're saying we're making this parameter and it has these features. And then we're saying that the function actually depends on those parameters. So this is really hard to take in all these different APIs at once, but I just want to show that they're all there. And if you eventually start needing them, you can stay within the panel world and get the functionality you need. The last one is callbacks, which is very explicit and you get fine-grained control, but it's more verbose. So all of these different outputs, you can use, you can call .show on them, and it'll pop open a new tab running a bokeh server, and you can do the interactivity there, interact with your dashboard there rather than in the notebook.
That's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. Or this is better.
But wait, there's more.
So if you write .servable, no, I don't want that. Then you can just call, let's see if I can get my terminal open. It's kind of underneath the thing. Okay. So then you can call panel serve the thing, And then this is, so now we're serving a notebook without using Jupyter.
Yeah.
And it just pops open.
Yeah, I see what you mean by being very or similar to Voila. Voila has
Yeah.
kind of a very similar command line interface for doing something like that.
Right. Yeah. Very similar. It can also take. It doesn't have to be a notebook. It can also be a Python script.
Sure.
But yeah. So that's the APIs. You can find all that on our panel docs. So that notebook I was showing you is actually part of the user guide. It's called APIs. And it'll take you through what I just showed, pretty much the same, just a little more words. And I guess, Philip, I don't know if you want to take over at this point, showing the panel website.
Yep, I'll briefly show the website, and then I'll show some more complex examples. So yeah, our website, we've already seen the user guide. We also have
could you zoom in a bit? Just
there we go. Is that a little bit better?
Yep, thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, so then we also have the reference gallery, which kind of gives an overview of all the different kind of components that panel ships with. So all the widgets, the various layout types that we have support, and then all the things that you can display. And then finally, we have a gallery where kind of we have some simple examples. We have demonstrations of the various APIs. Basically, we've broken it out into various different types of examples.
Just real quick, how easy is it to write a new widget if you wanted to write a new widget?
So if it's an existing bokeh widget, it's super easy. If you want to write a completely new widget, you kind of have to write a bokeh model, which requires you to write the JS component and then also write the Python component. But it's really not that, if you've done some web development or worked with JavaScript a little bit, it's not that difficult.
Okay.
And we're hoping to have some more guides on kind of building those.
Okay.
Okay, so then I'm going to quickly show some more complex apps. So here's a slightly more complex application where you kind of have cross-filtering. These are all the glaciers in the world, and so you can select some section of the glaciers, and you can cross-filter, histograms of like the annual temperature, where these selected glaciers are. But you can see like kind of this whole dashboard, everything here is reactive. So this text is reacts to your selection. You can clear the selection, and then also, if I kind of, let's try that. If I make this no longer be the full screen app, then it kind of resizes to match the size of the browser, which is kind of.
Oh, it's responsive too.
Yeah, nice.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I'll quickly go through some. Other complex apps. Here's one kind of showing off Data Shader. Data Shader has been covered in a previous webinar, so if you're interested, you can look at that. But it kind of just shows the thing Julia was saying about kind of declaring some parameters, and then you have a bunch of dependencies, and different functions have different dependencies. So you don't want kind of everything to get re-executed when you change one parameter. This lets you kind of isolate each little computation. So for example, here the show labels parameter is linked to whether you're basically these labels on top of this map are on and off. And so if I click this, all that happens is that code gets re-executed and changes the alpha. Or for example, I change the tile source. And so all these computations that don't actually require any computation are really quick. But then also I can zoom in and use Data Shader to kind of get that kind of interactivity where it actually resamples all the data as I zoom. And I think that stuff is currently out of memory, which is why it's kind of slow. But yeah, this is basically 300 million data points resampled on the fly. Okay, I think we're running out of time, but I'll quickly show something I was talking about earlier, which is the Google Summer Code project. Kind of explore X-array data sets. So here is basically it's a bit more GUI. You load in some. I should probably show the actual notebook. You load in some data. In this case, it's just a tutorial data set, and then you say basically show this dashboard. And it kind of lets you explore that data. So you can pick the coordinate that you want to plot, kind of show plot long against latitude. I want to select by time, and then it also lets you extract by time. So it's kind of neat. So you can kind of explore this data set, but picking different times. But then you can also say, basically, I want to extract the value along the stack of images across time. So for example, here you can see that the temperature varies over the time that this data set is in.
That's awesome.
So it's kind of neat. You can build really quite powerful dashboards. And the final dashboard is actually something that has been built by Quansight. So it's a consulting project you guys have done, which is, so this is a really one of the most complex dashboards that have been built with Panel. It takes a minute to load the data. So this is 5 gigs of, this was built for the LSSD telescope to kind of monitor, they basically scan the sky for millions, hundreds of millions of stars, I guess, and then kind of need to analyze the data, explore it. And so this dashboard is kind of, it's built on the template functionality in Panel, where you can basically write a custom template where you can lay things out, not just using the row and column things that you've seen before, but actually kind of write custom HTML to kind of lay things out manually. So this doesn't seem to be loading right now, which is kind of unfortunate.
Says it's waiting.
Yeah, I probably should have restarted the server before I got here.
Yeah, I know that these data sets are huge. Like they.
So yeah, this is 6 gigabytes. So maybe I just didn't give enough time, and also I have.
Yeah, some of the initial test data sets they were saying were like, no, they would send us a sample that was like 30 gigs or 70 gigs, and that was their sample data set. So.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah,
so yeah, basically.
LSST is huge. It's huge data volumes. So yeah.
Okay. But yeah, it's kind of neat that you can do layouts, you can do custom notifications. Kind of it lets you do here we go. So if you put in the effort into kind of doing writing in your own HTML code and so on, you can do really, really complex layouts like this, where you have different pages. You have kind of this allows you to do cross selection. So here I've selected on this plot, and then it does cross filtering here. So we're hoping to build some more complex examples like this in the future to kind of show off where the full complexity that you can achieve with Panel.
Yeah, that's awesome looking. Yeah, and just a huge amount of data going through this pipeline. Yeah, that's really cool. Well, thank you both for showing those off. At this point, we're going to go into our roadmap discussion. So at this point, we'll talk about sort of where Panel is going in the future and what are the different particular items of development. And the thing to keep in mind here, these are all really good places for folks out there to get involved, either in contributing code, or if you're have deeper pockets and are able to fund Panel and would like to see Panel evolve in a certain way. These are fundable areas, let's say. So with that, what's on the roadmap? Philip, you want to take it away?
Sure. So we talked a little bit about like how Panel is built on top of Bokeh, and you can write these custom extensions. So currently, writing a custom extension is pretty straightforward, but in the moment, Bokeh is basically gone through a refactor where building custom extensions is going to be much more powerful. You can bundle, it'll actually be easy to ship proper JS extensions where you build the JS file, and then we can start kind of integrating projects from JavaScript projects from NPM and start building components on top of various NPM-based libraries. And so we're hoping to kind of expand. You saw the set of components that we currently have. We're hoping to expand those by building on that work. And so we're going to basically look at what kind of components are needed, how can we improve, and so on. And kind of related to that is that this Jupyter ecosystem is really amazing. So IPyWidgets has got a wide range of widgets. You've got things like IPyVolume, you've got IPyLeaflets. And so leveraging, it's kind of unfortunate that we're kind of currently separated from that ecosystem. So something that we're working on hard is kind of being able to reuse the components that that ecosystem has built.
Yeah.
And kind of say, I just want to have my IPy volume thing in a panel and deploy it as a bokeh dashboard, as a panel, bokeh-based dashboard anyway. And so we are making good progress on that, but there might be complications, and so we're looking to kind of, during the integration work, we're certainly looking for help if we can.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly powerful. And Carol, with your Jupyter hat on, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think, certainly Sylvan and the folks that are sort of taking the lead on widgets are probably more than willing to work together, because there's more work on all of these things than any of us can do. And, if I go back, I think back like 4 years, we kept talking about dashboards and there was really no way to do it efficiently. And then in the last probably year and a half, there were glimmers of ways. So this space is moving really quickly. And I think as much as we can be open, in terms of the components, that will benefit everyone. And so I would say, keep the discussions going.
Actually, so back in June, there was a Jupyter dashboarding workshop in Paris with Sylvain and others.
Right.
So I attended that, and that's kind of where some of these ideas came from. During that workshop, I managed to get an initial prototype of getting panel apps deployed in Voila. So basically wrapping.
Nice.
You kind of wrap bokeh components in an IPy widget, and then it all just works. So that work is almost done. So we're hoping to get that out very soon. It's just the opposite direction of getting panel IPy widgets working in panel. It's kind of slightly more difficult because they're quite closely tied to Jupyter. But I'm definitely hoping to kind of keep that communication with the Jupyter folks going.
Yeah, definitely. And if I can do anything, please let me know, because they're great folks.
It was a super great workshop.
Time is the gating factor, more than anything
and that
else.
seems like it's an eminently fundable objective.
One would think so, wouldn't it?
Yeah, definitely, probably the shortest path to success on a lot of these things. So,
nice.
And
I think, one other item that we've built this project on top of bokeh, which is fairly well documented. But then the other library that it's really built on is this param, which we've mentioned a few times now. One problem with param is that it's really underdocumented. So we're hoping to kind of work on that documentation. Currently, we explain things about param in the panel documentation. It'd be nice if it had its own documentation. So it's hard to get funding to work just on documentation, but I think it's really valuable and important.
So documentation lover, I totally hear that. Was there a particular technical reason you went with param over traitlets or something else?
So param is something that we've developed. So we've been using it for a long time.
Okay.
Kind of, it seemed like the most natural fit for us. Traitlets would have been good too. What I found, I really like traitlets, but what I've found is that not many people actually use it for, libraries use it internally to declare the traits, but I've never seen it much in user code, and so.
Right, it doesn't get exposed
and
as
so
much.
Param we've always built our user interfaces on top of param, and it seemed to make the most sense.
Makes sense. Great.
Julia, are there any
and I think Julia had some more.
Yeah, I think I have an echo, so I'm gonna reload.
Okay. Well, while she's reloading here, one of the things that I see as being another really good place to help out this entire ecosystem is in terms of the packaging, especially with the packaging of JavaScript components. It just seems like that's such a huge roadblock block to any of these web UI kind of components and widgets that people are building right now. It's kind of an unsolved problem, but that's with my packaging hat on. So yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, it's a tough problem.
It is a tough problem.
Yeah. So there's a couple more roadmap items that we wanted to just touch upon. So we want to simplify the API even further if possible, without changing it dramatically, but just allowing it to be a little more intuitive and having the different APIs kind of be a little more similar, or at least being able to pass widgets around more freely. So that's kind of part of this separation from param. So panel will always be built on param, but right now we recommend that people go back to param for certain functionality, for the classes. And it'd be nice to not have to recommend that anymore, and to just sort of be able to not have the user fall out of the panel world. Another thing is we want to try and capture more content-specific examples from users, and also try and produce some more advanced dashboards that we can show specific areas of expertise. There's also, towards that end, we've started this website, examples.pyvis.org, which I think Phil maybe mentioned, which is meant to be examples of any visualization done in Python that are specific to a particular area of research or content or material. So they're really kind of like almost papers or something. They're just in depth in one particular area to sort of showcase the tools.
So is that a good place for people to contribute
cool.
then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we're always looking for more examples, different from different.
Yeah, we have a lot of earth sciences right now, because that's what those are the projects we've worked on. But we know that people are using these things for finance and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. Sort of like the IPython notebook gallery of days gone by, and just to see how other people are using it, and kind of adapt it to your uses from that is really powerful, I think.
So one last item that we really want to work on too is kind of the deployment story. Like you've seen, you can do panel serve, whatever, and then serve it. But if you wanted to have hosted somewhere, that's, I mean, to many people, it's not obvious how to do that on Amazon, on Google, or whatever.
Right.
So we'd like to work on, basically, if people can help out on documenting that better, but also making that process easier. So there's various cloud offerings to do that kind of deployment. And so if we can work with people to make that easier, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, no, that sounds like another great place for people to contribute, either in code or in funds or in any other way. Compute time. Yeah, so I think that about wraps up our roadmap discussion, actually. So, and just for emphasis again, right? Like these are all places to contribute, and in any way that you have available. And there's probably a lot of other items that are open for contribution as well. So please do check out Panel, and I guess find Philip on Gitter for the moment. But
and if you make something, tweet it at us.
Don't tell people.
Yeah, yeah.
Tweet it out at you.
We'll get your Twitter handles in a moment here. But before we do that, we have our user questions. So we've got a couple of questions coming from the viewers here. So the first one comes from Piaru, who asks, does Panel support animations? Take that where you will, I suppose.
All right, I guess I'll take that question. It depends. So you can do animations using, you can basically update bokeh plots, you can update matplotlib plots, you can update plotly plots. Other types of animations, I guess, yeah, it depends on what you mean by animation, basically. It shouldn't be hard to wrap other types of animations in Panel, but that's basically the extent of it right now. You can.
Yeah, if you want like a play button instead of a slider, we have that. if that's what they're talking about.
Very cool. I think I saw a GIF. Yeah, so PR is clarifying here, for instance, have a slider that a plot depends on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can have a slider. You can have a play button where it just goes through all your different plot states. And you can even, so one nice thing about panel is you can kind of say embed this, and so it'll kind of go through the entire widget parameter space. So let's say you've got 2 or 3 widgets with 10 different states. It'll record all the different states, and then you can kind of record that into an HTML file and just send that around instead of having a whole server.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, perfect.
Pretty awesome stuff. Question, one of the questions I had, I also help write and maintain Papermill, which is a way to, an application to parameterize Jupyter notebooks and run that. And I'm just curious if you've seen anybody using that with any panel.
I don't think I've seen
Otherwise,
that.
I think it might be fun.
No, I've not seen that. I wish panel, Papermill had been around a couple, I mean, it's been around a while now, but I remember we wrote an early implementation of kind of taking JSON strings and then feeding those into param and kind of those things. It'd be nice to revisit that now Papermill exists.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were thinking about it like a year and a half ago. So Papermill is also equally as young as Panel. So yeah, but definitely let us know. We've got some interest on the Interact side for that as well. We've got another question.
Yeah.
I think Anthony,
right. So Kofi
that
asks, I see some similarities with IPyWidgets in terms of functionality. How different is Panel from IPyWidgets?
The functionality is pretty similar, right? But the difference is that that you don't need Jupyter to serve them. We've talked a bit about how we're trying to work to get IPyWidgets within panel objects. So hopefully you won't have to think about which you're using in the future, and you can just use either.
Yeah, exactly. You can choose what you want. I mean, we've borrowed some ideas from IPyWidgets. I also, at that Jupyter dashboarding workshop, we kind of talked a little bit to the IPyWidgets folks. And maybe some of our ideas will feed back into there in terms of like some of the APIs are quite nice. Being able to, what you saw about decomposing different, for example, an interact plot and then laying it out, those ideas kind of they were interested in. But in terms of
the interact API is pretty much a mimic of the IPyWidgets one, right?
It is basically copied and then adjusted straight from widgets. Yeah.
Well, very cool. That about wraps it up for our Q&A section here. And now it is time for our world famous rant section, where we each get 15 seconds to rant or rave about whatever topic we want. Philip, it is your soapbox.
Okay, so since last time I ranted about Brexit, this time I'll rave about something.
Gonna rave about Brexit?
Well, I'm now out of the country, so I don't have to rant about it anymore. Although I could. No, this time I'm going to rave about Q Data Shader. So if you know about NVIDIA's Rapids AI initiative, it's kind of taking Python tools and making them faster with GPUs. They basically looked at Data Shader, were like, yeah, we can speed that up with GPUs. And they recently open sourced Q Data Shader, which we're now going to be integrating with Data Shader itself. So we're going to have even faster rendering than you saw earlier.
Incredible. That team, that Rapids team is just killing it. Yeah.
Amazing stuff.
Yeah. Julia, it's your soapbox.
So I want to talk about the tahini milkshakes at a restaurant called Goldie in Philadelphia. They are extremely good. Anthony can vouch for them as well. They're very creamy. They come in a variety of flavors, and they're delicious.
Gee, now I wish I was closer to
Philly.
Philly
I wish
right
I had
now.
one to like pull out at this point.
It's not an understatement to say I moved to Philadelphia for those tahini milkshakes.
Yeah. So I kind of started out with a rant, but it could be a rave as well. But my rant is trying to troubleshoot someone's configuration problems when you don't know what configuration settings they have already set. So basically, you can't see their information. It's one of those like, okay, tweak this, tweak that. And it's annoying to try and do it that way, but then it's also pretty cool when they get it resolved. So I haven't decided if that's a rant or a rave.
Yeah, so
And Anthony.
mine is definitely a rant today. And for my rant, I have been very upset about how many people are parked in the bike lanes in Philadelphia, a number of Philadelphia specific discussions today, to the point where I've started another Twitter account called PHL for Bikes, Not Cars. Because it's just every day I'll see like 6 different cars parked in a bike lane somewhere on my 1 mile commute back and forth to the office. So it's very distressing. I think it's very dangerous to cyclist lives, and one of the reasons I don't really bike in Philadelphia. So I'd like to hear.
Maybe there's a panel community dashboard in there somewhere.
Bike safety.
Bike safety in Philadelphia.
That's why you're the professional, Carol, and I'm the hack, because you got me playing this back around. That's all the time that we have for today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. You can find us on Twitter at Quansight AI. If you're interested in funding open source projects, including Panel, you can find all the project roadmaps at quansight.com/projects. Philip and Julia, where can people find you and Panel?
So you can find me on Twitter and GitHub under the handle PhilipJFR. That's with 1 L double P. And then you can find me on Gitter, but please don't ask me too many questions. No, of course, you can ask any question you want, particularly if you want to get involved. And you can find Panel at panel.pyviz.org.
And Julia?
I'm everywhere. JSignal, first initial, last name. Yeah, I'm not on Gitter as much, so don't even bother.
Well, thank you both for joining us today, and all the viewers. Join us again next episode for a discussion on UMAP. Thanks, everybody.